Hi, it's Lily Hubbard here, and in today's video, my family will be talking about how they were impacted by Hurricane Katrina.
The story of Katrina really begins in Miami, where we got T-boned by a drunk driver early on the morning, the day after Christmas, because we were going to go skiing in Colorado, and poor Chloe nearly, this was devastating, she nearly didn't make it. It was a terrible, I flew in the helicopter with her, it was just awful. My little girl, I felt so awful.
I got hit and I was in another hospital. I had a crushed wrist and I had surgery, and Chloe had her hips broken, so George went with Chloe and I went to another. So we were all separated.
It was really
in
something.
ambulances.
So Chloe couldn't walk for a while, and so what we decided, six, 8 weeks actually, and so we decided that we were going to leave Miami. It was just really a bad experience for us. We got turned upside down on the highway. It was just awful. So we got a house on the West Bank, on the point there. In New Orleans on the West Bank, and it was a beautiful little place, but we wanted to put Chloe in a special school. We put her into McGee, right? And it was so great. I remember it was very uplifting for her. It was an all-girls school. She'd always wanted to go there. And so that was a wonderful experience. We were just getting into New Orleans. We had just moved there for the summer of 2005. Mm-hmm. And so what happened?
And I was a freshman in high school. That's kind of crucial to the story because I was just starting high school.
In crutches.
She was in crutches. She was still on crutches, poor kid.
Well, there was a notification that a big storm was coming, and I'm kind of like a prepper. I like to have everything ready and organized, and this storm was brewing, and I was like, oh my word, we have to make a plan to get out of here. So I reserved rooms in Natchez, Mississippi, like 5 days ahead of time, because I was taking no chances.
What was the name of that hotel?
The Ebola.
The Ebola.
No, the
Eola. The Eola.
Hotel.
The Eola in
Eola,
Natchez. It was a
Ebola.
beautiful hotel. And George said, listen, I'm going to take a ride on the levee with my son, with Robbie, and we'll decide about evacuation when I get back. This is Saturday morning.
There's a touch of a backstory there. When you get hit by a hurricane, the day before is so pretty.
Glorious.
It's just so beautiful. It's this high-pressure system, and so it was this fabulous day. And I had been going back and forth between Mexico City, because I had a case that was down there, and I had gotten something known as shigellosis, and the whole week before Katrina hit, I had been in the hospital. So I actually got out on Friday, and for the first time in over a week, I was able to do something. It was this glorious day. So I took Rob, who was about 5 or 6 or something, on a bike ride. So anyway, I get back, and Susan...
Now, wait a minute. He's riding on the levee, and we just had the update on the hurricane, and I'm thinking, where in the world is he? We have to get out of here. We have to get out of here.
Mom is freaking out.
I'm freaked out because it's the biggest storm ever seen in the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm rapidly running around our house, shoving jewelry in the laundry baskets, hiding china because you have flying projectiles, and I'm frantic. And finally, George gets home at about 1 o'clock.
It was a great bike ride, by the way. It was a beautiful day, and I had so much fun.
It's my turn to talk. They all interrupt me, and he walks in the door, and I'm like, look at that forecast. We have to go. And he watches the forecast, and he freaks out. And we have like 30 minutes to pack and get out of town.
Well, we got out of town ahead of most people because we were not stuck in that terrible traffic.
No, we left
right?
Saturday at 1 o'clock.
We left early, and even though I went bike riding.
But we still had a hard time
early.
getting gas. Because I remember going to one of those gas stations in Algiers Point, and the line was really, the lines were really,
but
really
I got gas.
long.
I got gas outside of town, on the other side of the lake.
And George is a prepper, not a prepper, but he prepares. And he said the one thing we have to do is make sure we keep a tank full of gas.
Yep.
So we drove straight north. There's a lot of traffic, but it flowed, and we went to Natchez, Mississippi, and I went into
about
them.
3-hour drive.
I collapse and can't get out of bed, and all I can do is stare at the weather, freaking out. I couldn't do anything after that.
Well, it was really interesting. So then Rob and I started playing football, of course, and Mom was inside. And we came back in, and I looked, and I said, what are you doing, honey? And she was on eBay. And I didn't even know what eBay was. And so the law firm is probably not going to survive. I don't know how in the world I'm going to pay for the bills. And
we were in a sedan, and it wasn't big enough to evacuate in.
We were in a little car. We had a Chrysler 300, and so I get in there, we had the dog, we had the kids, all in this little Chrysler 300. And I come in and I go, "What you doing, honey?" And she goes, "Well, I'm getting us a Suburban." And I said, "That makes a lot of sense. How are you doing that?" "Well, I'm doing it on this thing called eBay." And the only thing I knew about eBay was that it was an auction, right? And so I said, "Well, how are we doing?" And she said, "Well, we're winning on these 5. And I went, "Okay, I'm going to own 5 Suburbans tomorrow, and I don't know how I'm going to make all this go."
I knew we weren't going to win them because our bids were very low.
It was very interesting because what she said, she said, "Don't worry, we're going to win this one here." And I said, "Why is that, honey?" And she said, "Because it's 4-wheel drive and it has that thing on the front that you like."
that big
And you know what?
thing.
The next morning, that is exactly what happened.
See?
Yeah, she
I
had
have
it right.
intuition.
So
And we
there
still
go.
have that Suburban
To
today.
this day.
Yeah,
We've had
we
it for
still
20
have it.
years.
97 Suburban we got for $6,500.
And then we started driving. Okay, so we start driving out of Natchez. Oh, because the next day all the power goes out in Natchez. And if
Yeah.
you've ever been in a big storm, the power grid can go out for 500 miles.
And things
Yeah.
were getting kind of weird.
Really getting rough.
Like people in the hotel we were staying at, like there was just a lot of people crammed
Tension.
into the hotel
And-
rooms. There was definitely a lot of tension.
They were all evacuees.
Yes, they were
Everyone was
just
evacuees. There was no power. The hotel was
No
running on a
food.
generator.
animals
There
everywhere.
was the generator was not running the air conditioning, so it was hot as heck in that hotel.
And you couldn't get anything to eat because they ran out of food. And they couldn't
Yeah.
cook because there was no electricity.
And so it was a good time to leave. And so I had gone out the night before because I knew it was going to be
Rough.
iffy. And I'd filled up the tank in the little car, the Chrysler 300. And everybody else didn't do that. And the next morning, all of the gas stations had lost their electricity and nobody could get any gas.
So
And it was interesting because I had come in and told the folks in the hotel that things were going poorly in New Orleans, and they got very angry at me because they were all from there, and but
It was
they should have
flooding.
filled up their tanks because the next day you couldn't get gas in the entire state of Mississippi, and we were heading towards Maryland, and so we had to head towards Alabama, and we made it to Alabama because I had filled up the tank the night before. And we passed all kinds of people broken down on the road. Well, not broken down, but no gas.
No gas, sitting on the side of the road in lawn
100
chairs.
degrees.
It was
What
terrible.
a nightmare. It was
Terrible.
really, really terrible. But we did make it out of Alabama.
Where
Now, the
we
one
got
thing I
good
will
gas.
say about the Suburban that Susan got, that she knew which one she was going to get because it was 4-wheel drive. At the end of the day, the next morning when we got it, I said, "Hey, honey, have you looked at where it is?" And she said, "Oh, no, I didn't think about that."
No, I knew where it was.
And it was in White Plains, New York.
Free Katrina, they would just ship it down to you
And
by car.
we-
They send it to you somehow.
We were in
Maryland.
Natchez, Mississippi.
well,
Here in
yeah.
Mississippi.
Yeah. So anyway, we drove to Maryland, and then I flew to White Plains, and then we got the Suburban.
And we got a really good deal on
Yeah, it
it.
was a great deal. It was a good job. But
But it was really surreal. We drove through the entire state of Mississippi, Alabama, and there were only cars going north. There were
Yeah.
no cars going in the southbound
What was going
lane.
southbound?
The only cars that were going the southbound lane were Army, National Guard,
And fire
construction vehicles, and
Fire
cranes.
trucks. And fire trucks.
And fire trucks.
department.
They're just emergency vehicles.
emergency and electrical. Hurricane Katrina hit us at 5, and it was a massive storm. And when you looked at it on the satellite, it filled up the entire Gulf of Mexico.
It was 500 miles wide.
It was incredible, and we later went to Ground Zero where it hit in Pass Christian, Mississippi, to look for a boat that we had over there, a 35-foot Chris
we
Craft,
did find one.
1938 Chris Craft,
in the woods.
and it was amazing. It looked like a bomb had gone off. There was nothing there. There were homes that had been built prior to the Civil War that we used to see all the time that were just entirely flattened. There was a bridge to the road that went along the beach there in Pass Christian, and the entire bridge was gone. This is the kind of force that Hurricane Katrina had. It was one of the most destructive hurricanes ever to hit the United States of America. But what it also did is it backed up the Mississippi River because the winds were so incredibly strong. And it backed up Lake Pontchartrain. So all of a sudden, Lake Pontchartrain had a whole lot more water in it than it was supposed to. And what happened from that is that it broke the levees that protected the city of New Orleans and a town outside the city called Metairie. And suddenly the entire greater New Orleans area was an estuary of the Gulf of Mexico. Literally sharks swimming down Poydras Street, which is like the main drag, right?
But there are certainly alligators.
Oh yeah,
too.
snakes, alligators, sharks. We had I remember going in and looking at the town on the 15th day after the hurricane when I went back to rescue Chloe's cat. And
That's another story.
Oh, so George, you went back.
I went back on day 15. Yeah.
After he bought the Suburban in New
Yeah.
York, and we drive. Where did we drive?
We drove
to Texas.
Well, we drove all the way to Dallas, Texas, where I was trying a case, and we got a house in Highland Park. We got to Highland Park, and we rented a house. Susan did all this; she set all this up. But we rented a house, and there was nothing. We didn't have anything. Mm-hmm. We slept on hardwood floors.
We had no clothes with us.
We didn't have
clothes
anything
on our back for 3 days.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Susan put Chloe in Highland Park High School and put Rob in Bradfield Elementary School. And when she put Rob into Bradfield Elementary School,
I had
the
an
teacher,
angel.
Yes.
I had an angel from the PTA. Nancy Anderton, and I'll mention her name, from Dallas, who reached out to me, and within hours we had beds, sheets, phone system, sofas, furniture. We had
knives,
everything.
food.
She was my
How did
angel.
you meet her?
Somehow she reached out to me through the PTA.
So I went back because we had left Sabrina,
Our cat.
the cat. And
Wait a minute, let me just say this before anybody gets mad. We had a huge laundry room, like 12 by 18 feet.
But this was common. People
And we
left
thought
their
we
animals.
were going to be gone 2 days or
Cats
a
can
night.
survive. A lot of
We
people
had the
left their
cat
animals.
well taken care of. It had food, litter, box, water, enough for 2 weeks. But we
Endless
thought
food
we
and
were
water.
going to be gone a day, maybe
well,
2 days.
we
That
were
was
gone
in our
15
mind.
days. I got back on the 15th day. And,
You did, but we were
yeah.
not, yeah.
And I had to sneak around the National Guard to get in to town. I
Brought
went all the
people with
back
water.
ways, and I got in. So I got into the West Bank where the house was, and I got into the house and looked around for the kitty cat. Got the kitty cat. Kitty cat was fine. No problems. Took me a little while to find her, but I got her. And the National Guard was there. I mean, actually, it was 101st Airborne.
So it wasn't flooded, the house?
It was flooded. Well,
Our house was not.
Not our house, because the West Bank on Algiers Point is high. It's high ground. And actually, the house that we had bought, because we had bought another house in the Garden District, so we had one house we were renting in Algiers, we had another house in the Garden District, because I went over there too. None of them were flooded.
We were lucky.
But they were both on high ground. The rest of the city was totally flooded. The main downtown was flooded. The CBD was flooded. And like the whole Superdome area was surrounded by water. There was not a soul. There was not a soul there. The only people there were military people, emergency people.
And a few people like him that sneaked in.
Well, and also I was there illegally because I wasn't supposed to be there because it was closed. But I was determined to get Sabrina. So we're there. Black Hawk helicopters are flying. It was the most surreal experience that I've ever been through, because you have this city where it's normally teeming with people, just people everywhere, right? And then there's nobody there. It was like post-apocalyptic in the feel. And I'm in the house getting the cat, and all of a sudden I hear, "Freeze!" And I go, "Whoa!" And it's the 101st Airborne, and they go, "You are not supposed to be here." They were protecting people's houses, thinking I was a looter. I go, "No, I own the house. It's my house. I'm not a looter." And so they helped me get the cat, and they helped me and they said, "You better get out of here, because after 6 p.m. it is shoot to kill. There's a curfew, and it is shoot to kill." And there was a little bit of a war going on with gangs and the military at that time. So it was quite a devastating event. The entire city was wiped out, and the flooding was not taken care of, and the city was not dry and habitable completely for almost 6 months. We left in August. It hit on August 29th. We left on August 27th. I came back 15 days later, And we did not get back to the city to live in the new house we had bought, which was in the Garden District,
Like January,
until
February.
January. The
And
whole
then,
city
even
suffered.
then, it was iffy. It was really,
really-
rough. Like
Yeah,
when
it
we
was terrible.
came back for
not
a
good.
day or two to do some stuff, get some things.
Like a month later.
A month later,
Yeah.
we were able to come in. We drove in from Dallas, and this is a shout out to a business that nobody knows this unless you were in New Orleans during that particular 30 days. There was nothing to eat. Grocery stores were trying to open, so you could get a little bit of
There was no
food.
water. When we came back a month
was
later,
no
there was
water.
no running water.
Okay, but there were Domino's Pizza on every street corner. They had sent
Mobile.
Domino's franchise owners came in. They were making pizza,
Yep.
stacking them on the street corners,
Yep.
and selling them. They were not expensive. It was the only thing we had to eat for 3 days was Domino's Pizza, and it was a huge deal because there was nothing to
That
eat.
and John Besh was making red beans and rice.
Yeah.
But
That was about the only thing.
when we came back a month later, I don't know if Robbie came back with us because we moved everything from the house
Yeah,
from
he
the
was
West
there
Bank.
helping. He
Yep,
was
yep.
We moved
helping
everything
us.
from the house from the West Bank. I packed up the kitchen. I will say nothing,
girl.
not a thing broke.
She packed the entire, and I have a lot of kitchen stuff.
And there was no running water. And there was still like sandbags on every corner. This is a month
Oh,
later.
yeah.
There's sandbags on every corner. A lot of other people had left their dogs, so there were wild dogs running in the street that had
Dogs
like
and cats, yeah.
repacked.
Yep.
And the day the water turned on, a restaurant opened.
The
It opened
restaurant
on
Lily
Magazine
bought.
Street in Washington Avenue, and we ate there
And
for
do you know
dinner.
the name of it? I do. The Living Room.
The living room.
Yep.
And that
Okay.
became my restaurant.
that
And
became
Yes, it
Lily's
did.
restaurant.
And
a few
four
years later.
and 4
Coquette.
years later, that became Lily's restaurant.
That's true.
Coquette. Yep, I
And
remember eating there.
The destruction that people, this is something people don't understand. The destruction was so bad. I don't know how many cars were flooded and how many refrigerators, hundreds of thousands. So you can imagine hundreds of thousands of rotten refrigerators sitting on the street,
Aye,
crawling
aye, aye.
with maggots.
Aye,
and I'd
aye,
say,
aye.
And
George,
nice refrigerator.
Yes,
there's a Sub-Zero! Go get it, we'll clean it up! And he goes, no! I was like, oh,
Well,
darn.
I cleaned like
Oh,
5 refrigerators. I got to tell you, man. Once you have pulled maggots out of a refrigerator, you know, with your bare hands, you don't
just
want to do
think of
that too
this.
often.
When there's no electricity for a couple of weeks and it's 100
95
degrees,
to 100 degrees.
everything in your refrigerator rots and gets maggots in it, and they
Aye.
crawl and run, and
Aye.
it's really nasty.
And
Yeah.
also, okay, then we also went back to New Orleans on Thanksgiving.
Yep, we did,
Because,
remember?
and it was the only Thanksgiving
And
that
where did we
Mom
eat?
didn't cook.
Where did we
went out
eat?
at a like.
It was in the
I can't
quarter.
Remember, it was Ralph Brennan's
Yes,
restaurant
in the
French Quarter.
on
Royal
Royal
Street.
or
on
something,
Royal
yeah.
Street. Yeah.
I've cooked Thanksgiving
Yeah.
for 45 years.
And that was the only Thanksgiving dinner
I've not
you
cooked, and
didn't
I might
cook.
not cook this one because I don't want to cook anymore.
And it was so nice to have like that type of meal, and it was on paper plates.
Yep,
Yep.
because nobody had.
Because there was no dish.
It
Probably
was very
didn't-
difficult.
Didn't have any help.
This was a terrible, terrible event. And what people should recall is that the counted deaths are 1,300 in the city of New Orleans. I had clients that ran boats, and they were retrieving bodies floating in the bayous, right? There were people killed. It was terrible. There were nursing homes that flooded. There were
It was
assisted
awful.
living
It was
homes
really
that flooded.
bad.
It was an
And-
awful, terrible event. But when you're undertaking these types of things, you have to have a spirit of we are
Survival.
going to get through this, and we are going to just take it a day at a time. We're going to rely on the good Lord to take care of us. And you know what happened? The good Lord took care of us. We moved how many times?
3,
in
4,
like 6 months.
5.
So I mean, we had to get we had to move fast out of the house when the hurricane was coming. We had to go all over the country to get the vehicle and go back to Dallas and rent a house. Then we had to turn around, come back to New Orleans, and get at least our stuff. I got the cat and a whole Suburban full of stuff that I took back to Dallas.
But let me say this: a lot of people had it way worse than us. We were blessed. My
Oh, yeah.
husband has, we were not displaced like other people, and so many people lost absolutely everything and had nothing.
Yeah.
And we did not have that happen.
But
So
that
I
was
feel,
my point during that entire time when we were blown out and everything. We never didn't have a meal. We never didn't have a place to sleep. We were protected, but you know what we did? We just did whatever it took. We put one foot in front of the other, and we just took it a step at a time. And interestingly enough, when I look back on all those different moves, and I remember moving and moving and moving, it was actually kind of interestingly a very adventurous time.
Yeah, you guys always
You know?
you always did a really good job of making bad situations into just, like you said, fun adventures.
What are you gonna do?
That's what we did.
Ride
Remember
down.
smuggling the dog into the hotels?
The cat. Oh, and the cat too. It was the cat also. Oh my god.
And then
hide the
eventually,
cat in the bathtub.
I got
Yeah.
home from school, and they were like, well, we don't really have to be here anymore, so we're just going to go skiing in Utah. And we're going to take that ski trip that we didn't get to take the previous
That's
year.
right. We went
And
to
we did,
Utah.
too.
We went to Park City for a whole month.
Yeah.
Because someone lent us a house.
Yeah.
We
Because
stayed
that
at their
case that I
house.
was trying settled,
Yep,
remember?
yep.
And I had a month off.
And someone had a house
That
and
was
they
it.
rented. Anyway,
Yep.
that's our story.
That's the Katrina story. It's a
Got it.
mix of good and bad. A lot of people had it so much worse than we did, and also, a lot of people lost their lives.
And their
But
homes, lost
when I look back
everything.
on it, I think of the humorous events like me trying to find Sabrina and the 101st Airborne coming up and telling me to freeze.
And Mom trying to convince you to get those refrigerators.
Yeah,
Oh,
one of those-
yeah.
Then some of my friends that I met in New Orleans, we were scavengers. We go, oh, there's an Oriental rug, and my friend Chad, we'd go get a rug, clean it, and use it, because and if they're throwing it out, they just throw everything
There's a
out,
lot of
Suppose-
wealthy people in New Orleans.
and they were
Oh,
all
yeah.
moldy.
Covered in mold.
But if you
Yeah.
clean it, you can get rid of it. There you go.
All right. Thanks for watching.
See you again.